Bali used to be the dream destination everyone talked about. 10 years ago, if you asked anyone where they wanted to go in Southeast Asia, the answer was almost always Bali. Instagram feeds were flooded with Bali sunset photos. Travel bloggers couldn't stop writing about Bali. Everyone wanted that Bali experience. But something happened that most people completely missed. Malaysia quietly overtook Bali and left it in the dust. We're not talking about a close race here. By 2024, Malaysia welcomed over 26 million international tourists, while Bali struggled to reach 6 million. That's more than 4 times as many visitors. And here's the part that might shock you. Malaysia didn't just win in tourist numbers. They beat Bali in almost every category that actually matters to real travelers. They did it while keeping costs lower, offering way more variety, and somehow maintaining better roads, airports, and infrastructure. This wasn't luck. This was strategic. And most people still have no idea it even happened. What makes this story even more interesting is how Malaysia pulled it off. They didn't launch massive advertising campaigns. They didn't pay celebrities to promote their beaches. They didn't try to copy what Bali was doing. Instead, they built something completely different, something bigger, something that gave travelers more options, better value, and fewer headaches. And by the time Bali realized what was happening, it was already too late. The gap between them keeps growing every single year. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly how Malaysia beat Bali, why it happened, what strategies they used, and why Bali might never catch up. Let's dive in. The price difference between Malaysia and Bali is the first thing most travelers notice. But it's not what you think. Everyone assumes Malaysia is cheaper because it's less developed or less popular. That's completely wrong. Malaysia is cheaper because they made a deliberate strategic decision to offer better value at every price point. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real numbers. If you book a decent 3-star hotel in Seminyak, which is one of Bali's popular beach areas, you're paying somewhere between $60 to $100 per night. That same quality of hotel in Penang or Langkawi costs $35 to $55. We're not talking about downgrading to a worse hotel here. We're talking about similar amenities, comparable views, the same level of service, but for almost half the price. The price gap shows up everywhere, not just hotels. A meal at a mid-range restaurant in Canggu sets you back around $12 to $18. In Kuala Lumpur or Georgetown, you pay $6 to $10 for food that's arguably even better. Street food in Bali costs about $3 to $5. In Malaysia, incredible local food runs $2 to $3 and the portions are often bigger. A beer at a local bar in Bali costs around $4. In Malaysia, it's closer to $3, sometimes even less depending on where you go. Transportation, activities, shopping, massage services, everything follows the same pattern. Malaysia consistently comes in 30 to 50% cheaper across the board. Now, here's where Malaysia's strategy gets really clever. They didn't achieve these lower prices by cutting corners or offering inferior experiences. They achieved it through scale and smart distribution. When you spread 26 million tourists across multiple world-class destinations, instead of cramming 6 million people onto one relatively small island, you create natural competition that drives prices down while actually maintaining or even improving quality. More tourists in different locations means more businesses competing for customers, which means better deals for travelers. More volume means businesses can operate more efficiently. Bali's fundamental problem is they concentrated everything in one place. They put all their tourism eggs in one basket, and that basket got expensive, crowded, and honestly kind of exhausting to visit. The diversity factor is where Malaysia really separates itself from Bali, and this advantage is something most people don't fully appreciate until they actually visit both places. Bali essentially offers one main product wrapped in slightly different packaging depending on which part of the island you visit. You've got beaches, rice terraces, temples, and jungle areas. It's undeniably beautiful, don't get me wrong, but after spending a week there, you've pretty much experienced what Bali has to offer. The experiences start feeling repetitive. Malaysia gives you 15 completely different vacations in one country, and each one feels totally distinct. Want beaches? Malaysia has everything from the backpacker paradise of the Perhentian Islands to the luxury resorts of Langkawi to the pristine, untouched shores of Tioman Island. and each destination feels completely different from the others. The Perhentian Islands offer crystal-clear turquoise water that rivals anything Bali has, but with a fraction of the crowds. You can snorkel right off the beach and see healthy coral reefs and tropical fish without fighting through masses of other tourists. Langkawi gives you that upscale resort experience with duty-free shopping thrown in as a bonus. Tioman Island feels like you've discovered a secret tropical paradise that mass tourism somehow forgot about. The beaches are quiet, the water is pristine, and you can actually relax without constant noise and chaos. And these are just 3 examples. Malaysia has literally hundreds of islands to choose from. But let's say beaches aren't really your thing. Maybe you prefer cities and culture. Malaysia has that covered too. Kuala Lumpur is a genuine world-class city with some of the best shopping, dining, and nightlife in all of Southeast Asia. The Petronas Twin Towers aren't just pretty buildings for Instagram photos. They're surrounded by a thriving modern metropolis with incredible restaurants, massive shopping malls, rooftop bars, museums, and a real urban energy. Compare that to Denpasar in Bali, which most tourists actively try to avoid spending time in. Malaysia's capital is actually a destination people want to visit, not just pass through on the way to the beach. Then you have Georgetown in Penang, a UNESCO World Heritage Site with arguably the best street food on the entire planet. This isn't just good food. This is food so incredible that people literally plan entire vacations around eating in Georgetown. The combination of Chinese, Malay, and Indian culinary influences created a food scene that Bali simply cannot compete with. We're talking about char kway teow, Assam laksa, nasi kandar, roti canai, chendol, and dozens of other dishes that will completely change how you think about Southeast Asian food. Walking through Georgetown feels like exploring a living museum, where every street corner tells a story, and every block has food that makes you question everything you thought you knew about flavor. Malaysia also offers mountain destinations that Bali can't match. The Cameron Highlands gives you cool mountain weather, sprawling tea plantations, and strawberry farms where you can pick your own fruit. It's the kind of place where you actually need to wear a jacket even though you're in a tropical country. The landscape looks more like Scotland than Southeast Asia. Bali has Ubud, which sits in the mountains and offers a cooler climate, and it's genuinely lovely. But it's one place with one type of experience. Malaysia gives you multiple distinct highland destinations, each with completely different characteristics. The Genting Highlands has theme parks, casinos, and resort hotels. Fraser's Hill caters to birdwatchers and nature lovers looking for quiet mountain trails. You're not locked into just one mountain experience. Let's talk about nature and wildlife because this is another area where Malaysia dominates. Taman Negara is one of the world's oldest rainforests, estimated at around 130 million years old. You can walk on canopy walkways suspended high above the jungle floor, spot wildlife like elephants and tigers if you're lucky, and experience pristine rainforest that makes Bali's small forest patches look like city parks. Malaysian Borneo, which includes the states of Sabah and Sarawak, has wild orangutans, bizarre-looking proboscis monkeys, pygmy elephants, and some of the most biodiverse rainforest ecosystems on Earth. You can visit rehabilitation centers where orphaned orangutans learn to survive in the wild. You can trek through jungle so dense and alive it feels like stepping back in time. Bali has the monkey forest in Ubud where macaques steal sunglasses and sunscreen from tourists. There's absolutely no comparison between these wildlife experiences. The cultural diversity in Malaysia creates richness that Bali fundamentally cannot replicate because of how each place developed historically. Bali is predominantly Hindu with a specific Balinese cultural identity. It's beautiful, it's unique, and it's worth experiencing. But it's singular. Malaysia is a genuine melting pot of Malay, Chinese, Indian, and indigenous cultures, all coexisting and blending in fascinating ways. You can visit an ornate Hindu temple in the morning, explore a Chinese Buddhist temple at lunch, and tour a beautiful mosque in the evening, all within the same city. This isn't just tolerance where different groups ignore each other. This is active integration where cultures influence each other and create something entirely new. The result is a cultural richness that gives you multiple countries' worth of experiences without ever leaving Malaysia. Infrastructure is something that doesn't get talked about enough when people compare destinations, but it makes an enormous difference to your actual travel experience. Malaysia invested billions of dollars into tourism infrastructure over the past 2 decades, and the results are obvious the moment you arrive. Kuala Lumpur International Airport is a modern, efficient transportation hub that regularly ranks among the best airports in the world. It's clean, well-organized, easy to navigate, and actually pleasant to spend time in. The immigration lines move quickly. The signage makes sense. Everything works the way an airport should work. Bali's Ngurah Rai Airport is functional and gets the job done, but it's often crowded, chaotic, and stressful, especially during peak tourist season. That difference in first impression sets the tone for your entire trip. Malaysia's highway system is the best in Southeast Asia and honestly rivals highways in many developed Western countries. You can drive from Kuala Lumpur to Penang, a distance of roughly 350 kilometers, on smooth, well-maintained highways in about 4 hours. The roads are clearly marked with English signage, well lit at night, and genuinely safe. Rest stops appear regularly with clean bathrooms and food options. It's actually a pleasant drive. Try driving across Bali and you're dealing with narrow roads where 2 cars barely fit, aggressive, chaotic traffic, motorbikes weaving everywhere, and significantly higher stress levels. Malaysia made it easy and enjoyable to explore multiple destinations in one trip. Bali made it challenging and intimidating to venture beyond your immediate resort area. Public transportation in Malaysia is decades ahead of what Bali offers. Kuala Lumpur has a modern metro system, an elevated monorail, commuter trains, and an extensive bus network. Getting around the city is cheap, efficient, air-conditioned, and tourist-friendly. The trains are clean, they run frequently, and they cover most areas that visitors actually want to see. You can navigate the entire city without ever needing a car or taxi. Penang has a decent bus system and affordable ride-hailing services. Even smaller Malaysian cities have reliable public transport options. Bali's public transportation is essentially non-existent for practical tourist purposes. You're stuck renting a motorbike, which is dangerous if you're not experienced, hiring expensive private drivers, or using taxis that may or may not use honest meters. For budget travelers trying to see multiple places, this transportation difference is absolutely massive. The visa situation represents another quiet victory for Malaysia that removes friction from the travel experience. Citizens from most Western countries, China, India, and many other nations get visa-free entry to Malaysia for stays up to 90 days. You literally just show up at the airport and walk through immigration. No forms to fill out, no fees to pay, no uncertainty. Bali, being part of Indonesia, requires many nationalities to purchase a visa on arrival. It's not terribly expensive at $35, and the process isn't particularly difficult, but it does involve standing in line, filling out forms, and dealing with bureaucracy when you're tired from a long flight. It's another small friction point that Malaysia completely eliminated. They removed obstacles and made it as easy as possible for people to choose Malaysia. Internet connectivity might sound like a boring technical detail, but it matters enormously to how travelers actually experience a destination in 2025. Malaysia has surprisingly good internet infrastructure. You can get reliable 4G and even 5G coverage in most tourist areas and even in some fairly remote locations. Many cafes, restaurants, hotels, and public spaces offer free Wi-Fi that actually works at usable speeds. This matters more than many people realize, especially for digital nomads, remote workers, and younger travelers who need to stay connected for work or to share their experiences. Bali's internet is notoriously unreliable outside of the main tourist zones. Connections drop constantly. Power outages interrupt service. For anyone trying to work remotely or run an online business while traveling, Malaysia offers the reliable connectivity they need, while Bali creates constant frustration. Safety is another dimension where Malaysia quietly excels compared to most tourist destinations. Malaysia has a relatively low crime rate, especially violent crime. Crimes against tourists are quite rare. Petty theft like pickpocketing can happen, just like anywhere in the world, but it's not the constant concern it becomes in some other popular destinations. Women traveling alone consistently report feeling safe walking around Malaysian cities, even at night. The local population tends to be friendly and genuinely helpful, without being overly aggressive or pushy. You're not constantly being approached by persistent touts, aggressive vendors, or people trying to scam you the way you often are in Bali's heavily touristed areas. That lower stress level makes the entire travel experience more enjoyable. Traffic safety in Bali is a genuine serious concern that results in real injuries every year. The number of motorbike accidents involving tourists is significant and troubling. The combination of chaotic traffic patterns, poorly maintained roads, inexperienced foreign riders, and minimal safety enforcement creates actual danger. Hospital emergency rooms in Bali treat tourist traffic injuries constantly. Malaysia's better road infrastructure, clearer traffic rules, and stricter enforcement make it considerably safer. You're significantly less likely to end up in a hospital because of a traffic accident, which is obviously important for having a good vacation. Overtourism is the elephant in the room that we need to address directly. Bali is genuinely drowning in tourists. The island's infrastructure, roads, water systems, and beaches were realistically built to handle maybe 3 million visitors per year. They're now getting double that number, and the strain shows everywhere. The result is constant traffic gridlock, where trips that should take 20 minutes take 2 hours. Beaches are polluted with plastic waste. Water resources are being depleted faster than they can be replenished. The quality of the tourist experience keeps declining. Popular tourist spots like Tanalat Temple or the Tagalalong rice terraces are so packed with people that you're basically just fighting through crowds for a chance to take a photo proving you were there. The actual experience of being there feels rushed, crowded, and frankly disappointing compared to what you expected. Malaysia took a completely different approach to tourism development. They deliberately spread their tourism infrastructure across the entire country instead of concentrating everything in one location. When Langkawi gets crowded, tourists naturally flow to the Perhentian Islands. When Kuala Lumpur is busy, people head to Penang or the historic city of Malacca. When the West Coast experiences its rainy season, tourists visit the East Coast or Borneo. The pressure gets distributed across many destinations instead of concentrated on one overwhelmed island. This means each individual destination maintains its appeal and doesn't get overwhelmed. You can still find quiet, uncrowded beaches in Malaysia. You can still discover neighborhoods and towns that aren't completely overrun with souvenir shops and tourist traps. Bali lost that sense of discovery years ago. The environmental impact of over-tourism in Bali is becoming impossible to ignore and is starting to damage Bali's reputation. Beaches that were once pristine are now littered with plastic trash washing up constantly. Coral reefs have been damaged by too many boats anchoring on them and inexperienced divers standing on fragile coral. Water sources are being depleted as hotels and resorts consume more than the natural systems can sustainably provide. Even the Balinese people themselves are increasingly speaking out about the negative effects of mass tourism on their island, their culture, and their quality of life. Malaysia certainly has environmental challenges too. No developing country is perfect. But the distributed tourism model means no single ecosystem is being destroyed or degraded by excessive tourist pressure. Malaysia also made smart strategic choices about what type of tourists they wanted to attract, rather than just chasing raw numbers. They didn't go purely for volume, they went for value and diversity. They invested heavily in luxury 5-star resorts and high-end experiences while simultaneously keeping excellent budget options available. This created a genuinely diverse tourist economy instead of a race to the bottom. Bali increasingly caters to budget backpackers and Instagram influencers looking for cheap content and photo opportunities. That particular demographic, while not inherently bad, tends to spend less money per day and often contributes to overcrowding problems without providing equivalent economic benefits to local communities. The halal tourism market represents a genius strategic move that often gets overlooked in discussions of Malaysia's success. Malaysia, being a Muslim-majority country with a moderate approach to Islamic practice, deliberately positioned itself as the top global destination for halal-conscious travelers. This opened up absolutely massive tourism markets in the Middle East, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Muslim populations worldwide. These tourists often spend significant money, stay for longer periods, and return multiple times. They're high-value customers. Bali, with its Hindu culture and reputation as a party destination, simply cannot compete for this demographic at all. Malaysia identified a large, underserved market segment and completely dominated it. Medical tourism represents another strategic advantage that brings in high-value visitors. Malaysia has world-class hospitals with internationally trained doctors who studied in the US, UK, and Australia, but procedures cost a fraction of what they do in Western countries. People combine vacations with medical and dental procedures, from routine dental work to major surgeries like hip replacements. The medical tourism industry brings in visitors who spend more money, stay longer, and often return multiple times for follow-up care. Bali has some medical facilities that can handle tourist emergencies, but they're not competitive as a medical tourism destination. Malaysia saw an opportunity and built an entire sophisticated industry around it. Shopping in Malaysia is genuinely world-class in a way that surprises many first-time visitors. Kuala Lumpur's shopping malls rival anything you'll find in Singapore, Hong Kong, or Dubai. Places like Pavilion KL, Surya KLCC at the base of the Petronas Towers, and Mid-Valley Mega Mall aren't just shopping centers. They're massive entertainment destinations with hundreds of international and local stores, dozens of restaurants, movie theaters, arcades, and more. Penang offers street markets, antique shops, and quirky independent boutiques in Georgetown's historic streets. Langkawi is designated as a duty-free island, which means you can buy alcohol, chocolates, perfumes, and luxury goods at prices significantly reduced from normal. Bali has some nice boutiques in Seminyak and local markets, but the shopping scene is limited by comparison and lacks the variety and scale Malaysia offers. The festival and event calendar in Malaysia stays packed year-round with celebrations from multiple cultures. You've got Chinese New Year with dragon dances and red lanterns everywhere. Hari Raya marks the end of Ramadan with open houses where even strangers are welcomed. Deepavali lights up Little India neighborhoods. Christmas is celebrated publicly despite Malaysia being majority Muslim. The Malaysian Grand Prix brings Formula One racing to the Sepang International Circuit. Penang hosts its annual food festival. The Rainforest World Music Festival in Sarawak attracts international musicians and thousands of music lovers. There's literally always something interesting happening somewhere in Malaysia. Bali has Nyepi, the Balinese Day of Silence, which is culturally significant and fascinating, but it actually shuts down the entire island for 24 hours. Their event calendar simply doesn't compare to Malaysia's constant stream of diverse festivals and celebrations. Language creates another practical advantage that gets underestimated. English proficiency in Malaysia is high, especially in tourist areas, cities, and among younger Malaysians. Most signs include English alongside Malay. Restaurant menus are translated. Tourist information is readily available in English. Getting around and communicating is relatively easy for English speakers. In Bali, English is common in the main tourist areas like Seminyak and Ubud, but venture even slightly off the beaten path and communication becomes significantly more challenging. Malaysia's colonial history with Britain, while complicated, left the country with widespread English education that continues today. This makes Malaysia much more accessible and less intimidating for Western tourists, and really anyone who speaks English as a second language. Weather patterns actually favor Malaysia in some interesting ways. Bali has a pronounced wet season from roughly November through March, where heavy rain can seriously impact your vacation plans. Beach days get cancelled, outdoor activities become difficult, roads flood. Malaysia's geographically diverse landscape means somewhere in the country enjoys good weather almost year-round. When the West Coast experiences monsoon rains, the East Coast and islands are sunny and dry. When the East Coast gets its rainy season, the West Coast and Borneo have perfect weather. You can plan a Malaysian vacation in virtually any month and find excellent weather in at least one region of the country. Consistency might sound boring, but it matters enormously to the actual travel experience. When you book a hotel in Malaysia based on online reviews and photos, you generally get exactly what you paid for. The photos accurately represent the property. The amenities actually work. The staff provides professional service. Bali has developed a significant problem with inconsistency. A hotel with excellent reviews might be great when some people visit, and terrible when others arrive because staff turnover is extremely high and quality control is inconsistent. You read reviews and half say it's amazing, while the other half describe it as awful. That unpredictability makes vacation planning harder and creates unnecessary stress and disappointment. Food safety and hygiene standards are noticeably better in Malaysia, which directly affects your health and enjoyment. Restaurants are regularly inspected by health authorities. Street food vendors generally maintain cleaner operations and better food handling practices. You're significantly less likely to spend several days of your vacation dealing with food poisoning or stomach problems. Bali belly is an actual well-known phenomenon that affects a substantial percentage of tourists at some point during their trip. It's almost treated as a rite of passage. People joke about it, but spending 2 days stuck in your hotel room because of food illness isn't actually funny. Malaysia certainly isn't perfect, and stomach issues can happen anywhere, but the overall food safety track record is measurably better. Banking and money handling is smoother and less frustrating in Malaysia. ATMs are plentiful, reliable, and rarely run out of cash. Credit cards are widely accepted at most establishments. Exchange rates are displayed transparently. The Malaysian ringgit is relatively stable and easy to understand. In Bali, you're constantly dealing with Indonesian rupiah, where prices involve large numbers with many zeros, which creates confusion. ATMs sometimes run out of cash during busy periods. Many places only accept cash, forcing you to carry large amounts. Malaysia's more developed financial infrastructure removes these small daily frustrations that accumulate over the course of a trip. The hotel and resort landscape in Malaysia benefits from serious international investment. Major global chains like Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, and Accor have multiple properties throughout Malaysia. This means reliable luxury options where you know exactly what standard to expect. Plus, you can use loyalty programs and points. Importantly, these high-end hotels are integrated into developed areas, with restaurants, shops, and attractions nearby. You get the resort experience without feeling isolated or trapped on a compound. Bali certainly has luxury resorts, some of them truly spectacular, but they tend to be more isolated. Malaysia successfully integrated high-quality accommodation into broader destinations. Activity variety in Malaysia is enormous compared to Bali's somewhat limited options. Sure, Bali has surfing, yoga retreats, and rice field tours, which are all nice. Malaysia offers cave exploration in the massive Mulu cave system, one of the world's most spectacular cave networks. You can climb Mount Kinabalu, Southeast Asia's highest peak, which requires no technical climbing skills but offers an incredible challenge and achievement. You can dive at Sipadan, which Jacques Cousteau called one of the world's best dive sites, and which regularly appears on top dive destination lists. You can take professional cooking classes in Penang learning authentic techniques. You can trek through pristine jungle in Taman Negara spotting rare wildlife. You can visit firefly colonies that create natural light shows. You can watch sea turtle hatchings on protected beaches. You can go whitewater rafting down jungle rivers. Each activity is a legitimate, substantial experience, not just a tourist trap checking boxes on an itinerary. Nightlife and entertainment in Malaysia's cities offers genuine variety beyond beach clubs. Kuala Lumpur has sophisticated rooftop bars with incredible city views, proper nightclubs with international DJs, live music venues showcasing local and touring artists, comedy clubs, theaters with performances and shows, and legal casinos in Genting Highlands. It's a real diverse nightlife scene. Bali's nightlife is concentrated mainly in Seminyak and Canggu, and it's mostly beach clubs and bars playing similar music. It's fun, especially for younger travelers, but it can feel repetitive after a few nights. If you want entertainment options beyond drinking at beach bars, Malaysia provides significantly more variety. The work from anywhere trend heavily favors Malaysia over Bali. Reliable fast internet, affordable long-term accommodation options, excellent coffee shops with comfortable seating and power outlets, dedicated co-working spaces in major cities, and solid infrastructure to support remote work makes Malaysia a top choice for digital nomads. Bali aggressively tried to position itself for the digital nomad market and attracted many remote workers. However, the unreliable internet connections and frequent unexpected power outages make actually getting work done frustrating and stressful. Malaysia consistently delivers what digital nomads genuinely need without the constant technical frustrations. Family travel is significantly easier and more enjoyable in Malaysia. Proper theme parks like Legoland in Johor and Sunway Lagoon near Kuala Lumpur give kids real entertainment designed specifically for them. Hotels are set up for families with connecting rooms, kids clubs with activities, and child-friendly pools. Restaurants routinely have high chairs, kids menus with familiar options, and family-friendly atmospheres. Activities and attractions cater to different age groups with options for toddlers, young kids, and teenagers. Bali is beautiful and families certainly visit, but it's not particularly designed or optimized for family travel. Malaysian attractions actually created experiences specifically for children instead of expecting them to appreciate temples and beaches the way adults do. Accessibility for travelers with mobility issues, disabilities, or elderly travelers is measurably better in Malaysia. Modern buildings have ramps, elevators, and accessible bathrooms as standard. Sidewalks in cities are more wheelchair-friendly. Public transportation systems accommodate people with mobility challenges. Hotels understand accessibility needs. Bali's older infrastructure makes accessibility genuinely challenging. Many places have stairs, narrow passages, and uneven surfaces. This difference opens Malaysia to older travelers, people with disabilities, and anyone with mobility concerns who would struggle significantly in Bali. Air connectivity represents a massive practical advantage. Kuala Lumpur International Airport serves as a major regional hub for both AirAsia and Malaysia Airlines, with direct flights to hundreds of destinations worldwide. You can fly direct from Kuala Lumpur to London, Paris, Istanbul, Dubai, Tokyo, Seoul, Sydney, Los Angeles, and countless other cities. This makes Malaysia easy to reach from virtually anywhere in the world. Bali requires connections through other hubs for most long-haul international flights. You're adding hours to your journey and often significant extra cost. Malaysia made itself maximally accessible from everywhere. That convenience translates directly into tourist numbers because people choose destinations that are easier to reach. The return visitor rate for Malaysia is notably higher than for Bali, and this metric reveals something important. People visit Bali once, maybe twice, and generally feel they've experienced what the island offers. It's checked off the list. Malaysia brings people back repeatedly because there's always something new to explore and experience. The sheer diversity means you can have a completely different trip each time you visit. One trip focuses on beaches and islands. The next explores cities and food. Another goes deep into nature and wildlife. This repeat business creates economic stability and generates powerful word-of-mouth marketing that compounds over time. Malaysia successfully positioned itself as a destination appropriate for all seasons of life and all types of travelers. Honeymoons, family vacations, solo adventures, retirement exploration, medical procedures, business trips, adventure travel, luxury getaways, budget backpacking. They created infrastructure and experiences for every possible type of traveler. Bali locked itself into being primarily a destination for younger travelers seeking beaches, parties, and spiritual wellness experiences. That's a significantly narrower market with less spending power and less repeat visit potential. Government policy and strategic planning played an absolutely huge role that most casual observers never see or understand. Malaysia's federal government actively invested in tourism infrastructure and marketing for decades as a deliberate national economic strategy. They created Tourism Malaysia, a well-funded professional organization that promotes the country globally through smart marketing campaigns. They simplified visa processes specifically to encourage tourism. They invested billions in airports, highways, and public transportation. They developed national standards for hospitality training and service quality. This was coordinated national policy with long-term vision. Indonesia, by contrast, focused most of its tourism development on Bali while relatively neglecting the rest of the country. This put all pressure and all expectations on one small island that couldn't possibly handle it. Malaysia's pricing strategy wasn't simply about being cheap or undercutting competitors. It was about maintaining genuine value across all price points. You can find excellent budget hostels for backpackers and spectacular 5-star luxury resorts, and both categories deliver quality appropriate to their price point. Bali's quality varies wildly and unpredictably at every price level. You might pay $50 for a terrible room or $50 for something quite nice, and it's hard to predict which you'll get. This consistency means travelers trust Malaysia to deliver value, whether they're spending $10 a day or $300 a day. Malaysia also strategically avoided becoming overly dependent on tourists from any single country. Bali became heavily reliant on Australian tourists who could reach the island quickly and cheaply. When travel patterns shifted, when the Australian dollar weakened, or when economic downturns hit Australia, Bali suffered significantly. Malaysia deliberately diversified their source markets across China, India, Middle Eastern countries, Europe, other Southeast Asian nations, and smaller contributions from many other regions. No single market accounts for an overwhelming percentage of total tourists. This diversification creates economic stability and resilience against regional problems. The timing of Malaysia's major tourism push was absolutely perfect. Throughout the 2010s, as Bali became increasingly crowded, expensive, and frustrating to visit, Malaysia was ready with a compelling alternative. They weren't trying to be Bali or directly compete with Bali's brand. They were offering something fundamentally different that Bali couldn't provide: variety, value, space, and infrastructure. When travelers started actively looking for alternatives to overcrowded Bali, Malaysia was positioned as the obvious answer. Their decades of preparation paid off exactly when it mattered most. Here's something interesting about perception versus reality in tourism. Many people still think of Bali as the premier Southeast Asian destination because that's what Instagram and social media show them constantly. Influencers built their entire brands on Bali content and have personal incentives to keep promoting it. The narrative of Bali as paradise is deeply established in Western consciousness, and established narratives are extremely difficult to change even when underlying facts shift dramatically. But actual travel industry numbers tell a completely different story. Travel agents report steadily increasing demand for Malaysia and growing complaints about Bali's crowds and rising prices. Airlines are adding new routes to Malaysian cities. International hotel chains are investing in new Malaysian properties. Insurance companies see the claims data. The smart money and the professional travel industry already knows Malaysia won this competition decisively. Sustainability is rapidly becoming a major factor in travel decisions for many tourists, and Malaysia is far better positioned for sustainable tourism. The geographically distributed model prevents any single ecosystem from being overwhelmed by visitor pressure. National parks have proper management systems and dedicated conservation funding. Wildlife tourism generally follows better ethical practices with proper guidelines. Malaysia can credibly claim to be a more responsible choice for environmentally conscious travelers. Bali's severe over-tourism problems make that claim impossible. You can see the environmental damage with your own eyes. The future trajectory strongly favors Malaysia for obvious structural reasons. Malaysia has enormous room to continue growing tourism without destroying their destinations or degrading the visitor experience. They can add capacity, develop new areas, continue improving infrastructure, and keep attracting more tourists. Bali is already at or beyond sustainable capacity right now. They fundamentally cannot add significantly more tourists without making the experience worse for everyone. Malaysia has runway for growth. Bali hit the ceiling years ago. Business tourism and the meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions market heavily favors Malaysia. World-class conference facilities, modern convention centers, hotels specifically designed for business events, Malaysia invested heavily in this profitable sector. Kuala Lumpur regularly hosts major international conferences, trade shows, and corporate events. This brings high-spending business travelers who typically extend their trips into leisure time and often return for vacation later. Bali lacks the infrastructure and facilities for large-scale business events and conferences. Here's a reality check that might actually surprise people who've never visited both places. Malaysia's beach destinations are legitimately as beautiful as Bali's beaches. The Perhentian Islands have water every bit as clear and stunning as anywhere in Bali. Langkawi's beaches are genuinely gorgeous. Tioman Island's coral reefs are healthier and more vibrant than Bali's damaged, overexploited reefs. The fundamental difference isn't beauty or quality, it's marketing and awareness. Bali marketed their beaches globally for decades, starting in the 1970s and 80s. Malaysia's islands remained relatively unknown internationally. But natural beauty isn't the issue here. Awareness is, and that's changing rapidly as more travelers discover Malaysia. So why isn't everyone talking about Malaysia's absolute dominance over Bali? Several reasons. Bali had first-mover advantage in Western tourist consciousness going back decades. The island was discovered by Western travelers and artists generations ago. Instagram influencers and travel bloggers built their personal brands and follower bases on Bali content. They have strong financial incentives to keep promoting Bali because that's what their audiences expect and what sponsors pay for. The narrative of Bali as tropical paradise is deeply embedded in popular culture through movies, magazines, and social media. Narratives are extremely hard to change, even when facts shift dramatically. But facts ultimately don't care about narratives or marketing. The numbers are crystal clear and unambiguous. Malaysia is winning, and the gap keeps growing every single year. Malaysia didn't beat Bali by accident or luck. They beat Bali with deliberate strategy, massive infrastructure investment, genuine diversity, consistent value delivery, and sophisticated long-term thinking. They made visiting Malaysia easier, cheaper, safer, and more interesting than visiting Bali. They turned tourism into a professional national industry instead of concentrating everything onto one increasingly overwhelmed island. They thought decades ahead instead of chasing quick, short-term money. They built something genuinely sustainable, while Bali became a cautionary tale about the dangers of overtourism and poor planning. The broader lesson here extends beyond just Malaysia versus Bali. This story shows how smart strategy and consistent execution can beat first-mover advantage. It demonstrates how investing in infrastructure and diversity creates lasting competitive advantage that's difficult for competitors to overcome. It proves how spreading development intelligently across multiple locations creates resilience and sustainability. Malaysia essentially wrote the playbook for how a developing country can become a genuine tourism powerhouse without destroying the very attractions that made it appealing in the first place. If you're planning a Southeast Asian vacation sometime soon, the choice becomes pretty clear once you understand the full picture. Malaysia gives you substantially more value for your money, dramatically more variety and options, significantly better infrastructure that makes travel easier, and fewer overwhelming crowds. Bali gives you beautiful rice terraces that you'll share with hundreds of other tourists fighting for the same Instagram photo angle. Both destinations have genuine charms and appeal, but only one is actually positioned to deliver an excellent, consistently positive experience in 2025 and beyond. Malaysia already won this competition decisively. Most casual travelers just haven't noticed yet because the old narrative persists. Now you know the complete real story of how one country quietly became the absolutely dominant force in Southeast Asian tourism, while everyone remained focused on the island that used to be king. Subscribe if you want more videos breaking down topics like this that most people completely miss.